Welcome to the Randy Report. I'm Randy Slavatek, your host. I'm also the writer and editor of therandyreport.com, where you can find me every single day on the internet reporting on the daily news cycle in terms of politics, pop culture, and entertainment news of interest to the LGBTQ community and its allies. In this week's headlines, police say the murder of a trans man in upstate New York wasn't a hate crime. The latest polling from Gallup shows nearly 10% of Americans now identify as LGBTQ. A federal judge ridiculed Donald Trump's ban on transgender soldiers, and a Republican lawmaker in Tennessee wants to expand the state's Don't Say Gay law. All that and more in this episode of The Randy Report. Authorities have arrested and charged 5 people over the death of 24-year-old Sam Nordquist, a transgender man from Minnesota. Local police in upstate New York said that Nordquist had been tortured physically and psychologically for more than a month, including sexually assaulting him. Police say he died as a result of the abuse. Nordquist's family reported him missing several weeks ago after he had traveled to the Finger Lakes area in September. According to a felony complaint obtained by the local ABC News affiliate, before his death, the 5 suspects sexually assaulted Nordquist with a table leg and broomsticks. He was also beaten with sticks and belts. His body was then transported to a field in nearby Benton, New York, in an attempt to conceal the crime. Captain Kelly Swift of the New York State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigations told reporters at a press conference, "In my 20-year law enforcement career, this is one of the most horrific crimes I have ever investigated. Our investigation has revealed a deeply disturbing pattern of abuse that ultimately resulted in Sam's tragic death." Authorities arrested the 5 suspects after conducting a search of Patty's Lodge Motel in Hopewell, where Nordquist had been staying since last fall. He had worked at group homes for people with disabilities in Minnesota before traveling to the Finger Lakes region of New York to be with a girlfriend he had met online. The alleged girlfriend, who was among the 5 arrested, was said to have been staying with Nordquist at the motel. Following the discovery of Nordquist's body, questions arose over whether his murder would be treated as a hate crime. But over the past week, the Ontario County District Attorney and New York State Police issued a joint statement urging the community to not speculate into the motive behind Nordquist's murder. The statement added, "At this time, we have no indication that Sam's murder was a hate crime. To help alleviate the understandable concern his murder could be a hate crime, we are disclosing that Sam and his assailants were known to each other, identified as LGBTQ, and at least one of the defendants lived with Sam in the time period leading up to the instant offense. We share the community's shock at such a heinous act of violence and will follow any and all leads to ensure that the motive for this murder is uncovered." The latest data by Gallup polling shows the percentage of American adults who identify as LGBTQ has risen to 9.3%. That's up more than a percentage point from the 2023 data and almost double the 2020 figure. In 2012, when Gallup first started polling on the topic, the figure was just 3.5%. Asked whether they identify as heterosexual, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or something else, 85.7% say they are straight, 5.2% are bisexual, 2.0% are gay, 1.4% are lesbian, and 1.3% are transgender. According to Gallup, LGBTQ identification is increasing as younger generations of Americans enter adulthood and are much more likely than older generations to say they are something other than heterosexual. The recent increase is largely due to more adults in their late teens, 20s, and 30s, particularly young women, saying they are bisexual. Here's just a little more breaking down of the numbers. Along political lines, 14% of Democrats and 11% of independents identify as LGBTQ versus just 3% of Republicans. 10% of women versus 6% of men say they are LGBTQ, the difference is mostly because women are more likely than men to say they are bisexual. College graduates, 9%, and non-graduates, 10%, are about equally likely to identify as LGBTQ. I don't think this means there's something in the water or so-called indoctrination going on. I believe the increase in LGBTQ identification over the years is due in great part to the rising level of visibility of queer people, giving younger generations a greater sense of comfortability in acknowledging their true selves. This latest batch of data is based on telephone interviews with more than 14,000 U.S. adults. You can find the full report at Gallup.com. The Supreme Court declined to consider a challenge to an anti-drag law in Tennessee that limits certain drag performances, allowing the law to remain mostly unchanged. In an unsigned ruling, the justices rejected a request from a Tennessee theater company to participate in its challenge to the state's drag restrictions, first established in 2023 by the GOP-led state legislature. Although the law does not specifically reference drag shows, state legislators made it clear its purpose was to limit them. In passing the restrictions on drag, state lawmakers amended Tennessee's definition of adult cabaret entertainment to mean adult-oriented performances that feature topless or exotic dancers or male or female impersonators. Restricted performances must also be harmful to minors, which Tennessee law defines as lacking serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific values, and appealing to the prurient, shameful, or morbid interests. Soon after its passage, a Tennessee court ruled the law, which targets adult-themed performances occurring in public or where they might be visible to minors, as unconstitutional, preventing enforcement of the law in some regions of the state. However, a federal appeals court overturned that ruling last July, determining that the Memphis-based theater group, Friends of George's, did not have the legal standing to contest the state's restrictions. The Sixth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals concluded that the group was not at risk of breaking the law because their performances were not deemed detrimental to minors. Friends of George's contended that the state's law would adversely affect them since they create drag-focused performances, comedic acts, and theatrical productions outside of age-restricted locations. Several Republican-led states have considered or passed legislation to restrict drag performances, which conservative lawmakers say are inappropriate for young audiences. Advocates have defended drag as a form of self-expression that challenges gender and societal norms and promotes inclusivity. U.S. District Judge Ana Reyes ridiculed Donald Trump's executive order banning transgender people from serving in the military last week, calling the order's assertion that trans pronoun use undermines troop effectiveness frankly ridiculous, and evidence of Trump's unadulterated animus against trans individuals. Trump's order directed Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth to ban the use of invented and identification-based pronouns in the military and prohibit biological males and females from sleeping, changing, and using bathing facilities intended for the opposite sex. During the hearing, Reyes asked Justice Department Attorney Jason Lynch if the trans military members who filed lawsuits against Trump's orders are honorable, truthful, and disciplined. She added, "As far as I know, among them, they have over 60 years of military service. And you would agree that together, the plaintiffs have made America safer?" Lynch replied, "I would agree, yes." Then, Reyes said, "We are dealing with the President of the United States calling a group of people who have served their country, who, you have told me, have made America safer, calling them liars. This is a policy of the President of the United States that is affecting thousands of people, carte blanche, without any support that has been given by anyone. How is that anything other than showing animus?" Later in the 5-hour hearing, Reyes asked, "Can we agree that the world's greatest fighting force is not going to be impacted in any way by less than 1% of the soldiers using a different pronoun than others might want to call them?" She added that any common-sense, rational human being knows that trans pronouns don't harm the military in any significant way, adding, "because it doesn't." When a Justice Department attorney said they disagreed with Reyes's claim, she described the Trump administration's pronoun claim as a frankly ridiculous pretext for his transphobic animus. She went on to add, "If you want to get me an officer of the U.S. military who is willing to get on the stand and say that because of pronoun usage, the U.S. military is less prepared, I will be the first to give you a box of cigars." Trump's ban gives the Secretary of Defense 60 days to implement its directives. The ban will affect an estimated 8,000 to 15,000 trans soldiers. And that brings me to the end of this episode of The Randy Report. If you enjoy catching up on LGBTQ news in a quick podcast, I'd appreciate it if you'd share it with your friends. I like to think of The Randy Report as the 60 minutes of gay news, only shorter. And remember, you can find me every single day on the internet at therandyreport.com, where I cover the daily news cycle in terms of politics, pop culture, and entertainment news of interest to the LGBTQ community and its allies. Thanks for listening, folks. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.